How well do Canada's immigration laws and policies respond to immigration issues? Welcome, everybody. This is lesson 5.1, the beginning of chapter 5. This is all about immigration. Where are you from? What are you? If I were to ask somebody that question, usually they would go back and tell me what culture they are. This has everything to do with immigration. We will be learning about the early history of Canadian immigration. We're going to go back a couple of years in your education to talk about that. And you know what? You're going to learn a little bit about my family's immigration as well. So stick around and let's learn something. So this is the beginning of a new chapter, everybody. Hello, this is all about immigration. This is chapter 5. How well do Canada's immigration laws and policies respond to immigration issues? This is what we're going to be taking a look throughout this entire chapter. We'll be focusing mainly on 3 questions. What criteria does Canada use when accepting immigrants and refugees? How do individual and collective rights of Canadians influence immigration laws and policy? And then finally, lesson 5.4, how do provinces influence immigration laws and policies? 4-hour vocabulary, this chapter. Don't have that many, actually. You don't have. We've got only 5 words. Immigration, demographic, labor force growth, refugee, and accord. We're going to start this lesson going all the way back a few years when you learned about immigration to Canada for the very first time. So, a brief history on Canada's immigration. Well, it's no different today than it was in Canada's past. We have always relied on immigration to increase our population. Canada is huge. It's a huge country. It's the second largest country, area-wise, that is, the second largest country on the planet. So obviously we need people here to populate the country. We're actually going to talk about that a little while later. Historically, in Canadian history, being settled by and colonized by Europeans, it was no surprise that our first immigrants would have been from France and from the British Isles. And we've also learned in the past that we've excluded certain nationalities in our past. If you've been with us for a while now, listening to my lessons and attending class, you know that Canada has restricted and excluded certain nationalities, especially that of the Chinese and from India as well. We excluded people from India. So we've got new laws and we have these policies that exist that deal directly to immigration, or with immigration, I should say. And today, our immigration is actually characterized by visible minorities. If you go down the street, if you are going onto the train, if you're going to the grocery store, we see a very diverse group of people who call Canada home. That's because nobody is excluded based on their race or their ethnic origin. If you remember back from when we were talking about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you know why nobody is excluded, because of their race or ethnic origin. It goes against their individual rights. You may have seen this before. These are early posters trying to entice people, especially those from the British Isles, so from Britain, to come to Canada. Canada has always been seen as a land of opportunity. At one point, they were offering free land to get people to come over. They wanted to settle the West. They wanted more people to come into the West, and their plans did succeed. We do have many cities here in Western Canada on the prairies. We do have a lot of people that are now living here, and that is because of immigration. And immigration over the years has brought a much more diverse society. We are no longer, although we are officially bilingual and a bicultural country, we have much more diversity in Canada today. And that is all because of what happened in 1971. This was before Mr. Philip's time, 1971. There was a policy of multiculturalism that was introduced to Canada, and it recognized that we are a group of Canadians. We are a society built up by many different cultures, not just the French and not just the British anymore. And this policy in 1971 helped to protect and enhance all of our cultures. So we have festivals, we have first languages classes. You can go to Heritage Days here in Edmonton in the summer of during the long weekend in August, and you can see these festivals firsthand, and you can see these cultures blending together firsthand. There's first language classes. I attended Croatian language classes to better my Croatian language skills. I'm going to be honest with you, didn't go that well. My skills are still lacking, but I did attend those classes and it was available to me. And this policy in 1971 was also used to promote and respect the equality for all people who are calling Canada home. This further was developed into the Immigration Act of 1978. In the 1960s, that's when my family came. And in the 1970s, we saw a huge economic boom, and there weren't enough Canadians living in Canada to fulfill the jobs that needed to be filled. So more immigrants were needed. So in the Immigration Act of 1978, this was after the boom had started, Canada's goal was to attract skilled, educated immigrants. They wanted to reunite the families of the individuals that came to Canada first. Now they wanted the rest of the families to come over. We changed our rules on accepting refugees, and we allowed for quicker citizenship to take place. Back it up a little bit. If you remember a few minutes ago, I was talking about Canada being the second largest country area-wise on the planet. Population-wise, however, we are not that big. I don't know exactly what number we fall into. Somewhere, I think, in the 30s, or we rank somewhere maybe in the low 40s. I'm not entirely sure offhand here, but I do know that we are the second largest country area-wise. And approximately population-wise, we've got the same population as the state of California down in the United States. California, if you've ever been there, it's a big state, right? It's a big state, but they have the same population, very similar size to Canada. When we lay Canada, or I should say California, over top of Canada, we see area-wise, Canada is 25 times larger than California. So in the first picture here, it's just kind of right in the middle of Canada. And then on the picture on the right-hand side, we see it, California is placed over Alberta. And you can see area-wise, California is similar to the size of Alberta. California has approximately 38 million people. Canada has approximately 38 million people. So this is one of the reasons that we need to have immigrants coming to Canada, because there's so much land, and we need to fill jobs, and we need to make sure, we'll learn about this later, but we need to make sure that our country is secured. We need to be able to place people into Canada's north, so that if other countries want to encroach on our land, on our area, we have justification saying, hey, you know what? No, this is Canadian land. Look, we have people that are living on here. And every few years, we run into this problem with countries like Russia, like the United States, like Denmark even, who are kind of telling us that, well, you don't really have people up in the northern parts of your country, so we're just going to kind of come in and take it away from you. So that's a huge, huge deal. These next two charts that I'm showing you here, these are our Canadian foreign-born population based on the region where our immigrants are coming from. And you can see, we're going to use Asia in this example on the left-hand graph here, the chart. In 1971, 5% of our population was of Asian descent. 2016, we had 48%. Europeans, except for the British Isles, accounted in 1971 for 50% of our Canadian foreign-born population, and in 2016, 21%. So you can see a wide range of diversity taking place here in Canada. And from CBC News, the source being Stats Canada, as well as the map or the chart on the left. The one on the right, you can see here that our visible minority population is increasing. So right now we are sitting at approximately 25.4%, and by 2036, it's projected that 34.4% of Canada's population will be that of a visible minority. That just means we're going to be more diverse as a country. But let's look at some recent numbers when it comes to the distribution of recent immigrants. These are the most up-to-date stats. The last census was in 2021, but that information has not come out yet. So we're still using stats from the previous census. And you can see here, we'll use Alberta as our example. We are getting roughly between 17 to 18% of immigrants that are coming to Canada are finding and settling here in Alberta. Definitely, Ontario is going to be the number one draw for immigrants that are coming to Canada, and that's because of the city of Toronto mainly. Then we will have Quebec, no surprise there, with Montreal being Canada's second largest city. And then we'll have Alberta and then BC, and you can see the numbers for the rest of the provinces and for the territories up north. So where are our immigrants coming from? Well, in sticking with this same time period, this is where our permanent residents are coming from. We can see here we've got the Philippines, we have India, we've got China, Iran, Pakistan. The USA is still sending lots of immigrants to us. The UK, France, Mexico, we have a number coming to us from Korea as well. This is 2012, 2013, and 2014 numbers. So you can see here where our permanent residents, from which countries they are coming from. So if you are sitting in class watching this, take a look around. You can see that we are a very diverse country, and many of us can trace our roots back to a recent immigrant, myself included. It's time for story time, ladies and gentlemen. Story time with Mr. Philipplik. This is a brief history of my father's arrival to Canada. My dad was born under Italian rule, which later became the country Yugoslavia, which no longer exists. And after, in 1965, my dad made the decision to leave Yugoslavia, and he legally went into Italy because they bordered at the time. And he declared himself as a refugee once he crossed over into the Italian border. And he spent 9 months roughly in Italy as a refugee. And he worked during those 9 months to get his documentation so that he could come over to Canada. So he got his Italian passport and whatnot. And then he arrived in Canada on the SS Leonardo da Vinci, a nice Italian name. If you are remembering anything from grade 8 social studies, we do talk about Da Vinci. Well, he had a ship named after him, the Italian line Leonardo da Vinci. And my dad arrived in Canada, in Halifax, from Naples on September 14th of 1965, and he was processed. You can see here, this is his immigration record card. He was processed on that day. He didn't spend very much time in Halifax. The Canadian government gave him $36 and a train ticket so that he could come to Edmonton to work. So that $36 and a 4-day train ride over to Edmonton, and that's the brief history of the Philipplik family's arrival to Canada. He worked here for about 4 years before he had enough money for my mom to come over, and then the rest of the family was born here. What's your immigrant story, if you have one? Talk to your parents, talk to your grandparents, or talk to your neighbors, talk to your classmates. Some of your classmates are immigrants. You yourself might even be an immigrant. So what's your story? It's important to remember these stories and to hold on to these stories. Try and document these stories. It is a very worthwhile cause to have, a thing to have, a memory to cherish. So if you have any of these, you should probably start writing these things down, documenting them, videoing them, audio recordings, whatever you need to do. All right, I want you to head over to your notebooks and complete the questions for this part of the chapter.